everyone? Welcome back to a very different sort of video. Today, I will be going over 10 accounts of the times animals turned into man-eating killers. If you're sensitive to these sort of topics, please click off. This list is in no particular order, and video chapters will be provided if you want to skip to a certain story. If I get any info wrong in any of these stories, please let me know down in the comments in a respectful manner. Now with that out of the way, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Oh yeah, viewer discretion is advised. For this first story, we'll be heading to New Jersey, where the shark attacks of 1916 happened. This series of events happened between July 1st and July 12th. The first attack happened to a man named Charles Vonson, 26, when he swam out past the shore into the ocean. After a brief few moments, he was brutally attacked by a shark. He had a fatal injury that had happened on his left leg where the shark had clamped down and refused to let go. The commotion of the attack managed to get the attention of nearby lifeguards and beachgoers. Even after dozens of people tried to release him from the shark's grip, the animal still kept on fighting back. The shark then let go the moment it got a bit too close to the shoreline. Unfortunately, Charles's injuries were way too severe and he succumbed to the massive amount of blood loss. Sadly, that attack would be one of many that would occur within this time frame, since 5 days later, another fatal attack happened to a boy named Charles Bruder, 17, a bellboy at the Essex and Sussex Hotel. He was 100 yards off the shore when a man, Captain White, heard Bruder's cries for help. The captain made a disturbing discovery when he found out that both the boy's legs had been bitten off. The boy was hauled to shore but shortly bled to death. On the 12th of July is when an absolute massacre would happen, when a number of children had been playing along Matawan Creek. The next victim, a boy, Lester Stillwell, age 12, was swimming along the creek when the shark appeared and bit down onto him. The shark pulled him underwater. Stanley Fisher, age 24, rapidly dove into the creek to attempt to rescue the boy. However, the shark reappeared and attacked his right leg. Fisher would die a few hours later. 30 minutes later, yet another shark attack would happen, when the shark bit into the leg of Joseph Dunn, age 12. Fortunately, the boy would escape the shark's attack. He was one of the only people who survived out of the 5. Shark attacks at this time were almost never heard of and were more rare to find than a maxed out shiny Pokemon. The shark responsible for these attacks had become the enemy of the town, and a massive manhunt would then ensue. Shark hunters from all over had started looking for the shark. However, the shark was eventually found and killed by a man named Michael Schlisser. The shark responsible for all the attacks was a 7.5-foot great white shark. After the shark was found, no attacks happened there on out for the summer of New Jersey. This series of events would eventually lead to be the inspiration for many books and movies. Most notably, the most infamous shark movie of all time, Jaws, would be based on the attacks that had occurred. This wouldn't be the last time a massive shark attack happens. It should come to no surprise for anyone watching this that the next animal responsible for carrying out a number of brutal attacks was a saltwater crocodile. And it won't be the last story revolving a crocodile. This incident, along with another on this list, I found to be the most disturbing personally. For the second story, we'll be heading to Ramree Island off the coast of Myanmar. In 1945, during the last bit of World War II, the British force had to contest with the Japanese army. Seeing as they had already captured the land, the British had the intent to take over the island, to take over Burma. After a month-long battle between the Japanese and British, the Japanese had no other option but to scram to the mangrove swamps. And since the British had the Japanese surrounded in the mangrove jungles and swamps, the Japanese had no other choice than fleeing into 16 kilometers of crocodile-infested waters. However, that wasn't the only thing that the Japanese had to deal with. Along with the harsh terrain and man-eating crocs, there were venomous spiders and snakes, along with many disease-filled mosquitoes that made the trek much worse for the men. With the 1,000 men traversing through the swamps, that's when carnage unfolded. With saltwater crocodiles growing to be over 20 feet in length, and with the numerous men panicking, bleeding, and fleeing for cover, it would only call the crocs over for the feast of their lives. According to sources, within the stretch of 2 days, nearly 500 enemy soldiers were killed by the mighty reptiles, with another 400 soldiers succumbing to the diseases, exhaustion, and other wildlife. We don't know how many soldiers exactly were killed by the crocodiles, but many seem to think it was around the 500 range. Only 20 soldiers made it out of the jungle alive. One British soldier recounts a few things he heard that day. The scattered shots being fired across the skies, the roars of the vicious crocs, and the cries and screams of agony by the Japanese soldiers being killed by the animals. Saltwater crocodiles have been known to kill people who have either stumbled into their territory or unless the animal is hungry. However, these attacks have gone down as the most brutal crocodile attacks in history and have gone down in the Guinness World Records as being the most number of fatalities in a crocodile attack. However, another disturbing thought is, since saltwater crocodiles can live up to 70 years, there is a chance, a small chance, that those same crocodiles that carried out those gruesome attacks are still alive in those same rivers. In March of 1898, the British had just begun to build a railway bridge over the Tsavo River in Kenya. It was nicknamed the Lunatic Express due to it being a big waste of time, and since none of the African natives wanted anything to do with the project, the British decided to import laborers from India to start construction on the bridge. However, since the workers were both unfamiliar with the land and wildlife in the African plains, soon terror would unfold. Not long after they had started constructing the bridge, workers would go missing. The British thought that the men were just deserting the area. However, that soon proved to be false. Over the span of 9 months, 2 maneless male lions would wreak havoc among the worker camps and start a massive killing spree. During the daytime, the lions were nowhere to be seen. However, it wasn't until night when the pair would stalk numerous campsites and drag unsuspecting workers out of the tents and proceed to eat them. Normally, lions steer clear of humans. This time, it was different. These lions would start off by killing workers individually over the course of a few weeks. But as time progressed, so would the maulings, which instead of happening over a few weeks would now happen daily. Also, during the start of the first attacks, only one of the lions would kill workers at a time. Soon, they would start their killings together, and as more and more attacks started to intensify, it then looked like as if the lions went from killing out of hunger to just killing for the fun of it. Workers tried to deter the lions by using campfires and thorn fences. However, they never knew that lions could jump well over 10 feet and would easily clear the fence in a single go. According to Lieutenant John Henry Patterson, the man responsible for killing the beasts, he claimed 135 lives were lost to the lions. Although to this day, a debate is still held about how many were exactly killed, we may never know. Although some records do state that it's around 30 to 40 people that were killed. The story has sparked many novels and movies, most notably The Ghost in the Darkness, which I find to be a very good movie. Would highly recommend you guys watch it if you get the chance. And also another lion, sci-fi movie that came out called Beast, starring Idris Elba. I also really like that movie just because it was just something you can turn your mind off to. Before I go into this story, I just want to point out that the animal responsible for the killings was by no means a villain whatsoever. He was just acting out as an animal would do when put in this type of situation. The real villains of the story were the people responsible for putting this animal in such a horrible position, and that's the reason why this is even in the video in the first place. I'll try to be respectful to all parties involved as much as I can. I'm just trying to denounce the actions of this event just so maybe it doesn't happen in the future, because it really was a tragic situation. It could have all been avoided. Anyway, let's get on to the actual story. The animal responsible for these killings was an orca named Tilikum, estimated to be around 36 years old. To put this into perspective of how messed up this event is, to this day there have been no confirmed human fatalities by a killer whale in the wild. The orca in this story is known for 3 out of 4 of all human fatalities by an orca. Tilikum is possibly the most well-known orca in the world. He was a captive male who spent a good portion of his life in SeaWorld. In 1983, he was captured in Iceland and made it into Orlando in 1992. He sired 21 calves in his lifetime. Unfortunately, he led a really miserable life. Tilikum was one of the main orcas featured in the documentary Blackfish. If you want to know more about the torture and pain these orcas go through and while being held in these bad environments, go watch it. The documentary does a way better job than I could do at explaining, and it goes more into depth into the psychological and mental damage of keeping wild orcas in captivity. and that keeping an orca turns them unnaturally aggressive and has a huge impact on their mental health. Orcas are very social creatures with an extreme intelligence, with them traveling up to 40 miles a day at times in search of food, including exercise, and keeping a killer whale in such a small environment with no way of stimulation causes them great damage. Tilikum was responsible for killing 3 people, with 2 of those being trainers and the other being a man who trespassed into SeaWorld and decided to climb into Tilikum's pool. Fortunately, since Tilly's death, the breeding of orcas has been banned in numerous places. Bills have been passed in plenty of states for holding orcas in captivity, and this additionally came with adding better treatment and proper care for orcas also being held. This still doesn't take away from the fact that these conditions are what led to an orca murdering 3 people. Before getting into the next one, I just want to say that the topics I'll be covering are very disturbing and some might not want to hear what happens. Heavy viewer discretion is advised. This is Timothy Treadwell, and that name is probably very familiar to some of you if you followed the story back then. Before I continue, I just want to point out that he wasn't a zoologist or an expert or anything along those lines. After a mishap in his life, he managed to turn it around for the better after going to a trip on Alaska and observing bears, so good on him. After this experience, he decided he wanted to study bears and learn everything about them. To his credit, he wanted the public to understand that bears are misunderstood and tried to make an impact as an activist. However, while trying to do a good thing, it led to a very bad thing. The way he approached this situation could have been handled very differently. For over a decade, he recorded, studied, and even interacted with the animals. At times, he would get extremely close and would sometimes play with bear cubs. Yeah. All this because he claimed that the bears trusted him. As time went on, he got way too close to the bears and became way more confident. Before getting into the meat of the story, here's something that ties in with it. It's, little fun fact, if you will. So before hibernating, bears put on as much weight as possible, and this makes them way more violent and more of a danger to anything that crosses its path. And yeah, now back to Timothy. Against everyone's judgment and warnings, he chose this specific time to go camping around them. And not only that, but he decided to set up his campsite around a well-known bear trail that bears happened to go on, so that bears would walk right past his tent. He also refused to bring bear spray. And also another fun fact, it's actually recommended that if you're going to go in an area populated by bears, you should use bear spray to deter them since their noses are super sensitive. Whereas shooting them only pisses them off and might cause them to want to kill you more. And on top of all of that, he brought his girlfriend with him. Yeah, so just a little fun thing, I guess. This was pretty much the definition of wrong place, wrong time. On the 6th of October, 2003, rangers found the half-eaten corpses of him and his girlfriend. That's not the most disturbing part though, because a video camera was left there recording the grizzly's attack, recorded the entire thing. Also, another fun fact about bears, unlike big cats like lions and tigers that kill then eat, bears just straight up start eating their food alive. So there was a 6-minute audio recording of a man being eaten by a bear alive while he just sat there screaming in pain and agony, while his girlfriend could only sit back and scream and watch. The bear soon turned its attention to her and proceeded to eat her alive as well. The audio was so graphic and brutal that it was never released to the public, probably for our own good. However, reenactments of it, such as this, be found on YouTube based on the events. However, the original was far too disturbing to release and was kept private out of respect for the family. There is really no happy ending to this story, though. It's actually really sad because a few days later, that same bear, who's only, being a bear, was tracked down and shot dead along with her cubs. The story just goes to show no matter how much you think you have a wild animal's trust, they're still a wild animal at heart, and at any given moment can and will kill you. The Leopard of Panar is said to have the second highest number of human fatalities, making it the second most deadliest man-eater in history, with the first also being in this list. With an estimated 400 fatalities, the specific date of the attacks are unknown. However, experts say that they could have started in the early 19th century. Between 1875 and 1912, 12,000 deaths were officially attributed to leopards in just India. This man-eating leopard would go into the homes of victims at night and drag them out of the house, killing them. As time went on, the leopard became way more ballsy, with it heading inside the houses of the villagers and dragging them out in front of their families. This leopard was so elusive that it was almost never seen by hunters, due to its smaller build, of course. The leopard was able to hide and blend in with smaller bushes and trees to hide, until the famous man-eating hunter, Jim Corbett, shot the leopard dead in 1910, after a first failed attempt that managed to wound the spotted slayer. We don't really know why the leopard went on a human hunting spree. However, some people did think that it was because of a sickness or some kind of wound in its teeth that prevented it from hunting its usual prey, which is what usually causes these man-eaters to go rogue. As early as 1764 to 1767, a man-eating creature fueled fear into the French fields of Gevaudan. This creature, which people thought to be a rogue gray wolf, killed over 110 men, women, and children. The first victim of this beast on June 30th, 1764, Jeanne Boulet, a 14-year-old girl who was watching her sheep until she was savagely attacked by a creature. When she was found, her heart was viciously ripped out of her chest. A few months later, another teenager was attacked on those same fields, in the same fashion. In her final moments, she described this creature as a horrible beast. In the following months to come, more women and children were attacked by the animal. Something to note here, during the 1700s, it wasn't too much of a worry that this occurred, seeing as animal attacks at the time were pretty much common, but not to the extent of these killings. And in all of this, nobody knew what the animal was. Towards the end of 1764, witness accounts began to surface that the victims had their throats ripped out, their hearts, or at times their heads being completely severed from their body. Now panic arose. The identity of this animal was basically a must to find out what it was. While it is still unknown what this creature exactly was 100%, some speculate that it could have been a lion, while most people agreed that the beast resembled a really large wolf, that it was about as large as a calf. While some claims varied on what this thing looked like, another account claimed that its hind legs were longer than its forearms, and that it had a laugh-like cry, along with fur that was reddish-brown and long black streaks across its back, leading some people to believe that this could have been a hyena, which wouldn't be too far-fetched considering the description. However, this couldn't be the case since hyenas' hind legs are relatively shorter than their forearms. Another account claims that it was like a wolf, yet not a wolf. The thing that makes this creature more terrifying is how well it kept itself hidden from hunters. For many months, the best hunters could not for the life of them track down this beast. They tried luring the beast, they tried hunting it, but due to the harsh weather and conditions, they gave up. For the first 3 months of 1765, 29 villagers were killed by the beast, and further attacks persisted. King Louis had enough and sent his own personal Hunter Francois Antoine, and the royal gun bearer to set off and kill this animal. Soon after they tracked the beast, Francois took a shot at it and the bullet went into its eye, dropping it immediately. However, after a couple of moments, it rose back up and began charging. With no bullets left, another officer took a shot, killing the beast for good. Believing it was the same animal, Antoine presented it to the king, and the king had it stuffed, and Francois was given the reward and respect of the villagers.
until more attacks had occurred just 2 months later. The killings had started again for another 18 months, with a number of 30 plus fatalities in that same frame. In the summer of 1767, a number of 300 of the townspeople had enough of this beast bullshit and set out in search to kill it themselves. While in the forest, an animal leapt out at one of the hunters, Jean Chastel. He shot the animal and thus killed it. After they confirmed that this was the same animal that had rained terror on the villagers, Jean had the animal taxidermied, to which he presented to King Louis XV. However, the king had still believed he had the real beast, to which Jean left, receiving no reward for the bounty. Jean, however, had become the hero of this smaller village, which is sort of like a happy ending. What makes this story so scary to me is the real identity of this creature. To this day, nobody knows what this animal was, although, as stated earlier, some believe this animal to be a large wolf or a young male lion that had not yet grown to full maturity, while some still believe it to be a hyena. The age of this event added on with the mystery of to what this beast really was, plus the amount of carnage it left behind, surely make for an awesome horror story. Not just for you guys, but for many more generations to come. To absolutely nobody's surprise, the next animal on this list is a crocodile. Gustave was responsible for about 300 less people on the planet. It was likely that most of these fatalities were adults just going out about their normal day, collecting water and other resources, or children playing in the rivers. Gustave was a formidable foe for anyone that happened to cross his path. He measured at about 20 feet long, weighing in at around 2,000 pounds from estimates that I found, with a lot of people thinking he was around 100 years old, given the enormous size. Although it was fair to make the assumption that he was around 60 to 75 years of age, according to other sources I found while researching for this segment. He was far too big to hunt the usual prey items, and instead went after much bigger animals such as buffalo, hippos, and people. Gustave resided in the Tanganyika rivers of the Nile and was weirdly uncatchable. For a crocodile of his stature, you'd expect him to be a fairly easy catch or even spotted easily. That wasn't the case. On one account, researchers attempted to catch Gustave and potentially relocate him using a fairly heavy trap that weighed about 1,000 pounds. Later that night during a storm, they placed a live goat in the cage, awaiting the arrival of the crocodile. However, the next morning, the goat was gone, and so was the culprit. We don't know if this was specifically Gustave that took the goat, but many believe it to be. Other accounts also claim that Gustave had multiple bullet wounds scattered across his body, which indicated that he could not be taken down that easily using a standard firearm, and that many attempts were made to kill him. In 2019, it was alleged that Gustave was shot and killed by a hunter. However, with no evidence to back this claim up, the possibility is still out there for Gustave to be alive. It is unlikely, given that he was very old and succumbed to old age. However, a fact about crocodiles is that most of them don't even die due to old age. As long as their teeth are intact, they will continue growing until some other factor causes them to pass, such as a virus or being killed by another being. So it is still possible that Gustave is still alive out there today. He just hasn't made his next move. Yet. Before I start off with this story, I apologize for any names or pronunciations that I might have butchered in this segment. With that out of the way, let's begin. The year is 1915 and Japan was at war. However, not far from the villages of Rokens and Sawa, something would awaken that would forever change how this place would function. In the span of 2 days, 7 people would be killed by a Usuri brown bear. During the midst of November, a large brown bear would pull up to the house of a family just feeding on the corn that was harvested. Even though there was no attack or altercation, this was bizarre considering bears would be in hibernation during this time. On the 20th of November, the bear would return to the same residence. The head of the house, fearing for the safety of his family and his animals, organized a small team to await the bear's arrival. Just 10 days later, the bear reappeared. The group of men that had been asked to wait for the bear opened fire on the animal. Hurt, but not fatally wounded, the bear retreated back into the brush. Believing that the bear was now scared of human civilization and thinking it would die, the team considered the plan a success. However, success was far from what would happen next. On the 10th of December, just 3 weeks later, the bear appeared at the Oda family house. At the house lived the farmer's wife, Abe Mayu, and Hasumi Miko, an infant who was unrelated to the caretaker. Once inside the house, the bear had killed the baby with a bite to the head, after which it would turn his attention over to the wife, where the bear would drag her into the forest. The very next morning, a party of 30 men were organized to hunt this bear that had just murdered 2 people. After walking a sum of 150 meters, they had seen the bear, with 5 men opening fire on the animal with only one of the men hitting the bear before it ended up dashing into the woods. After a bit more searching, the men found the eaten corpse of Abe Mayu buried in the snow, with only her head and legs not being eaten. After hearing the news of the killings, the Miyoke family, mostly women and children, wanted to seek refuge, while guardsmen waited outside. That same night, the bear made it to the house, and after a couple of minutes, carnage unfolded. The bear had broken into the house. As the wife began to flee, she tripped on her son, which had clinged onto her legs in a state of panic. After hearing the commotion going on inside, the guardsmen busted into the house, where the bear had released the woman and child from his grasp, and turned his attention to the guard, which had now begun clawing at his back. Yayo, the wife, managed to escape with her child. However, the bear had now fatally mauled 2 kids, after which bit a 3rd child. The next fatality was a pregnant wife named Take, who had been eaten by the bear. Testimony later came forward with the claim that Take begged for the bear not to go for her stomach and instead go for her head. However, as the child was removed from the belly, they were found to be alive until shortly dying a few days later. After a strong 60-armed posse had been formed to meet the bear at the same house where they had thought the bear would return, the bear probably realized this somewhere in the middle and headed off to a different spot to take food. Finally, on the 14th of December, the bear was tracked down through a blood trail and paw prints by the men and had been killed while sleeping underneath a tree. It is said to believe that the bear was prematurely awoken from its hibernation and went on a search for food, only to stumble upon people, making them an easy target. While most Usuri brown bears mostly eat vegetation, meat is not entirely off the menu. However, after the dust settled, the attacks proved to be too much for the villagers, and soon everyone abandoned the town of Tsavo, leaving it to be a ghost town. To this day, only a shrine remains with accurate-sized houses, along with a life-size statue of the bear, along with another breaking through the house. That place still remains a ghost town, and people who go there to visit the place are always going to be reminded of the events that unfolded that fateful day. And last, yet certainly not least, is the most infamous man-murderer of all time, the Tiger of Champawat, commonly referred to as the Devil of India. This tigress was responsible for the deaths of 436 people, making it the record of the most human fatalities in history by a single animal. While researchers are unsure of an exact date of when the killing started, they were confident that she started taking lives in Nepal in the late 1890s. By 1903, she had already killed an estimated 200 people, making her the most feared man-eater. After the attacks became more frequent, dozens of authorities were alerted to dispatch the tiger. However, she managed to evade everyone and continue her rampage. Eventually, they drove the tiger out of Nepal, where she swam her way to India, which was somewhat of a W on their end, but she only began taking bodies again in the Kumaon region of India, which in fact was the same region the Panar leopard started subtracting people off the earth. The attacks only worsened once she made her way to India. On one account, a villager claimed to have heard the tiger's paralyzing roar near the village, with the grown men being way too scared to leave their huts to go to work. Jim Corbett, the man responsible for killing the tiger, along with many more man-eaters throughout his life, was called to get rid of the predator. On the day of the kill, he assembled a 290-strong armed posse to drive the tiger into a ravine, where she had just killed a 16-year-old girl. The ravine would follow throughout the jungle into a more open spot where Corbett would be lying in wait for her. He heard the men banging drums and getting louder and louder as they were approaching, meaning the tiger was approaching as well. The young hunter had been scanning the jungle and ravine desperately awaiting the arrival of the big cat, where the final battle would then ensue. The tiger revealed herself out of the thick grass and rushed at Corbett, where he had fired and missed. Then she retreated in the opposite direction, however circled back, where she would then be shot twice. However, Corbett had run out of ammo. This time she retreated back towards the creek. Then Corbett would rush back to the group of men, grab a gun, rush back to the ledge, and shot her, this time finishing her off for good. It was believed that the tiger was shot by a hunter way earlier before the killings had started, breaking her canine teeth, making her unable to hunt her normal prey. This injury is what most likely caused her to go on a human killing spree. However, another factor that could have played along in this is that tigers are one of the few animals that will actively seek revenge on those who wronged them. And while humans have taken over nature and dominated the food chain with our many technological developments and advances, we are still part of nature, and we are also never off the menu for these bigger and stronger animals, such as tigers. And there you have it, everyone, the video I've been talking about for God knows how many months. It's finally out, and I'm so glad that it turned out the way it did. There's some stuff in there that I'm not proud of, but, I just put my best foot forward and decided to get it out for you guys anyway. I want to give credit where credit is due. This is not my original idea. This came from Casual Geographic's video. Go comment. I'll leave this video down below in the description if you want to go check it out. It was just 100 times better than this one, but it was the inspiration as to what made me make this video. So go comment below on that video. Please tell him that I sent you, and let's see if he watches this video. If he watches this video, I'll be super happy. He's just overall a great guy, and he makes amazing content. I would definitely recommend subbing to him. So all of that will be down below in the description. What else was I gonna say? Yeah, I've been off work a lot recently, so I've had some spare time on my hands to finish this video and get it out for you guys. I also want to give credit to Mr. Nightmare for the style and tone in which this video took place, and if you love horror story narrations, this channel is the best one on YouTube to go watch. Absolute great content as well. Anyway, with that being out the way, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This took so long, and after a lot of demotivation and random motivation sparks, I finally got it out the way. But I'm super happy, and then if you guys want a part 2, comment down below as well. Let me know what you guys think. Anyway, I've been your host, Tiger Plays. That's gonna be a cut, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Halloween.